What is going on, Cuse Nation? Welcome to yet another edition of Orange Heat. My name's Giovanni Heater, as always, and thank you for joining me, as today we take a way too early look at the 2020 Syracuse Orange football schedule. Now, what really promoted this video for me and enticed me to do this video was the simple fact that CBS Sports released an article with their predictions for Syracuse football's 2020 season. And what they had to say was that Syracuse football would finish off with 0 conference wins in the ACC. They figured that Syracuse would win 4 games as the season went along, but it would all be in the non-conference portion of the schedule. Now, last season, obviously not as successful as what we had hoped for, and Syracuse losing a lot on the defensive end of things, especially on that defensive line. Kendall Coleman and Alton Robinson both off to the NFL. You lost Lakeem Williams at the head linebacker position, but you are returning a lot of depth in the secondary, which is exciting as well. Yes, you lost Antoine Cordy, but you still got All-American Andre Cisco back there. Ifatu Melifonwu's back there. Trill Williams is back there. And then the offensive side of the football, of course, Tommy DeVito was underwhelming last season. You're hoping the offensive line will get better. You're hoping Tommy DeVito will be able to progress. The run game was a positive last season. Mo Neal rushed for nearly 1,000 yards. It was just over 800, but almost towards his 1,000-yard mark. Jarvion Howard, your goal line type back. I think the only thing that you would have liked to see more out of would have been Abdul Adams, a little bit underwhelming, but they did give Mo Neal that one-back opportunity a lot of the times, especially in the early goings of the season. So Abdul's got another year. You have some big running backs underneath him, like we talked about Jarvion Howard. You have Jawar Jordan. There's a lot of talent on this team. A question mark might be the wide receiver position, but again, Taj Harris, Ed Hendricks should be healthy this season. So a lot to offer there as well, even though Tristan Jackson and Sean Riley had departed for the National Football League. Riley, obviously, to graduation. I think the two biggest things that you have to improve upon this season would no doubt be the offensive line and getting that pass game going. And they kind of go hand in hand together. The defense, I'd like to see more production out of the secondary. There were a few games where, even though they are very talented, got a little bit lit up last season. But nonetheless, let's dive in to the 2020 Syracuse football schedule. So leading things off, you open with a game on the road at Boston College. Something interesting, Syracuse hasn't opened the season with an ACC conference matchup in quite a long time. Syracuse, obviously not a tough place to play necessarily in Boston College, but any road game's difficult. If I had to pick, though, where I would want to play in the ACC, I'd say Boston College is probably the easiest place to play. They don't exactly get rowdy. It's a smaller stadium, so it's not as hostile of an environment. And then following that, you're going to go play at Rutgers, who is kind of the laughingstock of the Big Ten Conference as of late. Not necessarily a tough game there, but after you're coming off of a 5-7 season, everything is a tough game. After that, you're going to play host to Colgate in the third game of the season. That's going to be the first game inside the Carrier Dome. So much like last year, you're opening up with 2 games on the road. Why that is, I'm not exactly sure. Then you're going to go on the road and play at Western Michigan. Syracuse played at Western Michigan in the first game of that 2018 season, and we all know how that ended. That was the last trip the Orange have taken to Western Michigan, and they've played the Broncos the previous 2 years, this being the 3rd year in a row. After that, they're going to host the Louisville Cardinals, who, again, improved last season, are probably going to continue to improve. Scott Satterfield, the new head coach there for the Cardinals, and really improving on that Louisville program, getting his recruits in, getting his institutionalized just football knowledge in there, and kind of getting rid of everything that the old coaching staff and Bobby Petrino had to offer. After that, you're going to play host to Liberty at home. We all know we played Liberty on the road to open up the 2019 season last year, which ended up being kind of underwhelming. You thought you were going to go in there. I thought it was going to be a tough game, but Syracuse really seemed to struggle offensively. Talent sort of took over. They did win that game 24-0, but not as much as you would have liked to. And then you're going to go ahead and play on the road at Clemson in Death Valley, arguably one of the toughest places to play in the country. Syracuse in the 2018 season, though, put up a fight in Death Valley, almost knocking off the Clemson Tigers, who were top ranked at the time. That was after leading the Tigers for almost the entire game, just kind of letting it slip away at the end of the fourth quarter. Few plays go the other way, you're talking a whole different season. You're talking an ACC championship trip. What could have been kind of scary, how close they really were to a college football playoff conversation. But again, that's something that we can talk about another day, and we've kind of exhausted the conversation out of as Syracuse fans. After that, the Orange are going to play Georgia Tech inside the Carrier Dome. Now, I like this Coastal matchup in favor of the Orange for the simple fact that it's kind of one of the easier sets here. They're coming into their second year with their new head coach, and he's still installing his program here, getting his guys in. Remember, last season they were playing with guys that recruited to play the option, but they weren't playing the option, and they were kind of doing the best they could with the athletes they had. But again, guys that weren't recruited to play what they were playing in a completely different system, and that'll work a lot of times, but the option is so unique, it makes it tough. So this is a favorable matchup inside the Carrier Dome. I think that this is probably the best case scenario for getting a Coastal Division game. Again, you only play 2 Coastal Division games a year. That's Pittsburgh every single year because they're our contracted rival. And then you play another one, and it rotates through. Last year it was Duke. The year before it was North Carolina. The year before we went on the road and played at Miami. This year it's Georgia Tech. Next year, who knows what it's going to be. It's always fun to get that wild card Coastal matchup that you don't get to play every single season. And I like this one for Syracuse because it's favorable. I mean, you'd love to go on the road and play a team like Miami. You'd love to. I can't wait till we go to Lane Stadium and we play against Virginia Tech. A few years ago, we went to Virginia, and I actually went down to that game in Charlottesville. So this one, I like it a lot. Then after that, you're going to go on the road and play at Wake Forest. Syracuse is favored pretty well on the road at Wake Forest since joining the Atlantic Coast Conference. So you got to like their capabilities there. And then you're going to play host to NC State at the Dome. Last time you played host to NC State, that was the big game that got them ranked, and it was in late October. I actually am just noticing you're going to play Georgia Tech on Halloween, talking about late October. And I remember the theme of that NC State game was it felt spooky in the Dome. A lot of the promos were Halloween-based, kind of graveyard type. Thriller was the soundtrack. And then people are dressing up at the Dome with like pumpkin heads and stuff like that. And now you're going to go play a Halloween game against Georgia Tech. So pretty cool there. And then Florida State inside the Carrier Dome. Again, I like this matchup. It's tough to play in Tallahassee. There's no way around it. It is very difficult to play in Tallahassee. I think it's probably the second toughest place to play in the Atlantic Coast Conference, at least in the ACC Atlantic side of things in our division, besides Clemson, of course. So you like that you get them inside the Dome. They're improving. They're improving here. They're kind of working their way up back from the disaster that they kind of went through. They played in a bowl game last season against Arizona State. They fared pretty well. So that a tough game in the Dome, and that's going to be a season decider. That could be playing for bowl eligibility right there against the Seminoles in the Dome. And then you're going to cap off the season with a road game at Pitt. And Syracuse has seemed to always have a tough time playing on the road at Pitt since joining the ACC. It's kind of going back and forth. When they play at the Dome, they catch a win. When they go on the road, they suffer a loss. And that was the loss in the 2018 season, coming right off the heels of the Clemson kind of fiasco where you had an opportunity to beat them, as we talked about, and it just didn't happen. So going backwards, some things that are kind of weird here is where the bye weeks fall. And you can't see them right here, but the bye weeks are going to fall not exactly in a favorable mark whatsoever. You'd like that bye week to be right before a conference game, of course, especially a conference road game. Yet your bye week here, your first one, is going to fall right before that Liberty game. After you play host to Louisville at the Dome, you are going to be going into a bye week, going into that Liberty game. And that's just something that's probably the weakest game on the schedule. You'd like that to be in a situation where, like I said, you're going to play on the road, just a tougher game to kind of gear up for and get the team ready for. You'd love it the week after as you're going to play on the road at Clemson, but it falls right with that game against Liberty, and it's just kind of iffy. I don't necessarily love where it falls there. And then once again, you have some nice Thursday night games, which are kind of unique. So Thursday night games in the ACC are always interesting, to say the least. But as we said, an exciting season nonetheless. I think it's very favorable for Syracuse, one of the least difficult in the country. The ACC Atlantic has your work cut out for you as it is, but you're playing Georgia Tech. You're playing Boston College. I mean, look at your road games here. Boston College is a road game. Rutgers is a road game. Western Michigan and Wake Forest, right? Those are 4 road games that are more than winnable. And then you have Clemson and Pitt. Again, 2 tough places to play, playing at Heinz Field and, of course, in Death Valley. But if those are your 2 toughest road games and the second toughest road game is Pitt, I'm going to take that all day long. Because I feel like you can play in a half-empty Heinz Field late in the season a little bit better than you might be able to play, say, at Florida State, say, at Louisville. So I definitely like this. Wake Forest, again, not a huge stadium. Playing at NC State is always tough, and you get them at home this season. So just the way it falls, I think there's no way Syracuse loses every single ACC conference game here. There's no way you can convince me. I'm not saying Syracuse is going to come out and have a season like the 2018 season. A lot of things need to change. A lot of things need to be proved. We need to see how that offensive line is going to produce, how Tommy's going to come back. If you're going to see a quarterback underneath him, who knows? Maybe Rex Culpepper gets some snaps if Tommy's not performing. He's going into his senior year. So a lot of things up in the air, but I did just want to do an episode and take a nice look at the schedule, really in depth, and talk about it. Exciting stuff here, but thank you so much for joining me once again. We appreciate the support. Hit up the Twitter at GeoHeater. Hit the Instagram at Giovanni Heater. Go like the Orange Heat Facebook page. Stay tuned. We're figuring out how to move this into a podcast format, as well as keeping the YouTube, but also moving this onto things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So this is all up in the air right now. Right now we're on YouTube. But again, appreciate the support. Please like, comment, and subscribe as always. And to cap things off, we need a let's go orange, baby. Woo!